Okay. Shh. What kind of questions might you have come across on the homework? And remember, I showed you a little bit different way to do it. So when I go through the problems, I'm going to actually work it both ways so you can see both ways. 114? 114. Solve graphically, round the solutions to 3 decimal places where appropriate. Okay, so when it says solve graphically, you want to rewrite this equation to look like this. So once you have it written like that, then you can pull your graphing calculator up and put it in there. I'm just going with that. Is that okay if I do that? You need to see the whole thing? Yeah. You need to see the whole thing, or is that something? All right. Y equals, let's clear this one out because we don't need it. We got 10 x and then the squared button minus 23x plus 12. So this is going to be a parabola. It's going to open upward. 3 different things could happen before we graph it. It doesn't have to cross the x-axis. If it doesn't cross the x-axis, you don't have any real solutions. It could touch the x-axis once, which would mean the vertex is on the x-axis, which means you have 1 solution. Or it could cross the x-axis twice, and if it crossed the x-axis twice, we have 2 solutions. So I don't know what my last graph was. Does it help us out? Maybe it does. Oh, it does. So without being able to see the vertex, is it okay to say that it crosses the x-axis twice for our picture? So we can use our calculator to figure out where it crosses. So I'm going to go second, calculate, and I want to find a 0, so I'm going to use number 2. And it's going to say, we want to find the left. You go to the left side of our 0 and to the right side. So let's go. Okay, so we're on the left side of that 0 down there. So enter. And then I'm going to bring this down a little bit further. I know I'm going to go below the y-axis when my y component turns to negative. My y component right here is positive at 1.8. 0.47 is still positive, so we just need to get below it. Now we're at negative. So if I hit enter now, I don't want to guess. So it looks like at 0.8, that's one of our solutions to this problem. So 0.8 is one of the solutions to the problem. Okay. Second solution to the problem, we're going to go back and do the same thing. Pull up the calculator. I'm going to go to second, calculate. I'm going to calculate a 0. Okay, 0 is again the solution. So I want to be on the left side of this point right here, so I have to make sure I'm at a negative y component to be on the left side of it. I'm at a negative. And I'm going to continue moving my cursor until I get to a positive y. We're at a positive y now. I can keep going if I wanted to, but there's no reason to. Hit enter, I don't want to guess. It's going to find me the added intersection right there, so 1.5 is my other point. And there's my 2 solutions to the problem. So it's where it crosses the x-axis. What other questions we come across from homework?
What are answers for like when solving a problem that has a square root in it? Do you want it to work the square root out, or can we just leave it in the square root? Like, so say the answer is.
Which problem are you looking at, and I'll work it out.
That 210.
Number 10? Okay. So just number 10, just to verify.
Yeah.
So number 10. Okay. So I'm going to show you this 2 different ways I'm going to do the problem, and I'm going to let you pick the way you want to do it, okay?
All right.
So first way to do this problem is let's do it algebraically. I can do this to get there. I can do this to get here, and then I can take the square root of both sides, leaving it as a plus or minus root 10, which is like 3 point one something, right? Okay, I'm totally okay if you leave it as plus or minus root 10 because that's an exact answer. Okay, now if I use the graphing calculator on it though, and I wanted to see this, being it's equal to 0, I don't have to set it equal to anything, but I can go. I'm just going to change my graph so I can see a little bit better. And y equals, let's clear out. Hi. Let's clear this out. Clear what? 2x squared minus 20. Being that this side's equal to 0, I can do one of two things. I can put equals 0 here and have two lines, but equals 0 is the x-axis. So if I draw it like this, both of these regions are plus or minus root 10. If I were to go through and say second calculate and find a 0, because that's what we're finding, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to go to the left bound. So I need to get my y-axis above 0. So I'm at negative 10, negative 9, negative 6, negative 4. So I'm definitely above it now. So my left bound, I'll be above that. I'm going to move this down, go below it. I know I'm below it when my y value gets to a negative. Hit enter. So I don't want to guess. I want to answer one more time. So negative 3.16 is that answer. And if I went over here, I bet you that's positive 3.16 because our answer here was that. So what's the better answer to leave? Both. Unless I say leave it. If you have the terminology that says leave as exact, if the directions are that means exact. If it says round to 2 decimals, that's the answer I'm looking for. If I just say solve it, I'm going to leave it up to you. Is that okay? Okay. Any other questions you might have come across from the homework? Okay, if you would, pass your homework in, make sure your name's on it. If you're handing old homework in. Factoring is not everyone's favorite thing in the world to do. Okay, I'm sorry. We're hitting it. I will go over factoring by using the dream method. Okay, it's something that, you know, and here's the hard thing with factoring. Some of you learned the diamond method. Some of you learned the box method. Some of you learned the dream method. Some of you learned the guess and check method. Which way is right? Whichever way your teacher was excited about teaching it and you understood. Right? So, let's say we wanted to solve this problem. Okay? So it's set up for us to factor. Now factoring, again, it's not everyone's friend, and I struggle as a math person with factoring because factoring sometimes works. Okay? There's a lot more trinomials out there that factoring won't work on because they have irrational answers. The quadratic formula is a fancy way of factoring, and it works. My favorite way of actually solving is by using completing the square, in which, actually I won't be here to teach you, but I have a teacher from next door who will be teaching you guys on Monday about how to do that. But what I will also do is I will record me completing the square, so if you needed a secondary thing, so I'll record that for you over in the other building and put it up for you as well. Okay? So let's factor this. So the dream method, this is the way I do the dream method. You might have seen a slight modification, but I think you could follow along. Okay, this is being recorded, so you can refer back to it if you need to. So first thing is, if it's y equals or if it's equals 0, you're ready to start factoring. If it's y equals, that means you're putting it into two binomials. You're just breaking it down. If it's equal to 0, that means you actually want to figure out what the solution to the problem would be. The solution to the problem, remember, is where it would cross the x-axis. Still with me in this presentation? So with the dream method, I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at my very first term, and I'm going to write 3x and 3x as the front end of each of the two binomials. Okay? Now, things I know, if I use the four-letter F word in math, which is FOIL, I know that if I were to go 3x times 3x to get my first term, I would get 9x squared. 9x squared is not our first term up here, so we probably will have a greatest common factor, which we will refer to as trash. Okay? So then I'm going to take the last term, and I'm going to multiply it to the first term. Okay? So 3 times negative 8 is what? Negative 24. In order for me to multiply two numbers together to get a negative, that means I have to have one positive and one negative. So I'm going to put a positive here and a negative here. I could have went backwards. It doesn't really matter. God bless you. Okay? From there, I'm going to think about all the factors of 24. So I know that 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6 will all get me to 24. In order for it to be negative, one of those would have to be negative, one of them would have to be positive as far as all of our factors. Okay? So now what I want to do is I want to figure out which one of those factors, when added together, one being positive, one being negative, would add up to be the number 10. Okay? So I want to take this, I want to figure out which of those factors are going to give me that. Okay? So you're saying 12 and 2. Which one would have to be positive to have a positive 10? 12. So I'm going to have a positive 12, and I'm going to have a negative 2. Is that okay? The very last step to the dream method, and it's easy to forget this step, is get the greatest common factor that it has and throw it out. It's trash, so I'm not even going to write it down. So I'm going to look at the first set of terms right here. Is there a greatest common factor that those share? What is it? 3. I'm throwing the 3 away. I'm factoring a 3 out of that first one and throwing it away. I'm not even going to write it down. So if I factor a 3 out, I'm going to wind up with x plus 4. Do I have a greatest common factor here I can throw out? No. So that's going to remain as 3x minus 2. Okay? If I FOILed this back together, I would get this answer. Okay? If I FOILed this back together, so x times 3x is 3x squared. Sweet, it works. Outside's negative 2x, inside's positive 12x. Positive 12x minus 2x is 10x, and then my last term is 4 times negative 2, which is negative 8. It works, okay? This problem is not equal to y, it's equal to 0, so I have to go one step further to solve it. What's the one step further to solve it? How do I solve it? Set each of those binomials equal to 0. So I'm going to take x plus 4, set it equal to 0, and I'm going to take 3x minus 2, set it equal to 0. Is that okay? And then it becomes algebra 1. What's the first answer going to be? Negative 4. That's my first solution. Okay? The second one, I'm going to have to add 2 and divide by 3. So add 2, divide by 3, so I'm going to wind up with 2/3. Okay? These are the solutions to the problems. Meaning, if I were to take negative 4 and plug it into x, the whole thing would become 0. If I were to plug 2/3 in to x and solve it, I'd get the whole thing being equal to 0. If this was y equals and I wanted to know where it crossed the x-axis, it would cross the x-axis at negative 4 comma 0 and at 2/3 comma 0. And the vertex would have to happen halfway in between the two. Okay? Not really? All right. Can I try another one? Sure. These are kind of coming out of the notebook. I modified them a smidge, but I think you'll be okay with them. All right, so if I had 2x squared minus 11x plus 5 equals to 0, okay? So this means I'm going to break it down to two binomials, and then because it's equal to 0, I'll set each of those binomials equal to 0, right? So the first step is what? Do what and what? What? 2x and 2x. Now we should, so we're just taking this term, rewriting it twice, not having it squared. But we know that 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Our first term is actually 2x squared, so it looks like we're going to have some trash. The greatest common factor we're going to throw out at the end, right? What is -5 dreaming about being? What is 5 dreaming about being? 10. And in order for me to get 10, I know that a positive times a positive is positive 10. But what else is equal to 10? Negative times a negative, right? So we have to think, do we want both signs to be positive or do we want them both to be negative? Why? -11, good. Because this is a negative here and that's a positive, that means that both signs have to be negative here. Okay, so think about it. If I were to do the FOIL, the last term of FOIL would be the two last terms. So I have a negative times a negative is going to come out to a positive to give us this positive 5. So the factors of 10 are 1 and 10. And what else? 2 and 5. They both have to be negative, so it doesn't matter the order you stick them in. Which of those, when I add together, would give me -11? 1 and 10. So I have a 1 here and a 10 here. Do I have a greatest common factor right here I can throw away? No, so I'm just going to be left with 2x minus 1. Do I have a greatest common factor here that I can throw out? 2. 2 goes into both. Factor it out. Throw it away. 2 goes into 2x. Leaves you x. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So if I were to FOIL that back together, I'd get my original answer. So just double check it. 2x times 2x is 2x squared. Cool. Outside is -10x. Inside is -1x. -10x and -1x combined together gives me the -11x. And -1 and -5 multiplied together give me +5. We okay so far? All right. We're not quite done with the problem yet. How do I know? It's not equal to what? It's not equal to y, so we can't stop yet. Okay? But we have to solve it. It's equal to 0, so we want to solve each of these. So I'm going to take each binomial and set those equal to 0. Okay? So on the first one, I'm going to do what to both? What do I do here? Add 1 and divide by 2. Add 1 and divide by 2. So if I add 1 and divide by 2, I'm going to wind up with 1/2. On this one, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So if I were to take 1/2 and 5 and plug it into our x value, the whole thing would become 0. If I was graphing this on the xy axis, where it would cross the x-axis would be at 1/2, 0, and 5, 0. Okay? So different ways of looking at it. Have you guys seen this way before? Does it feel okay? Like you're like, oh, getting it? Am I teaching you the way you learned it? I hope, kinda. And then, so I started with the tougher. I'm going to go back to the easier. I started with the tougher. I'm going back to the easier. Is that okay? What happens if I had this? Is it a dream method problem? I could make it a dream method problem. What would I put as my two binomials? X and X, or 1x and 1x if you wanted to get technical. And here's the nice thing. 1x times 1x is 1x squared, which is the same thing as x squared, which is the same thing as this. So what do you know that might not happen later? There won't be a greatest common factor, which we call trash, right? So now, 24 is dreaming about being what number? 24, okay? And those are both positive, plus and plus. Factors 24. That add up to 11. What do you think? 3 and 8. Okay? So 3 and 8 are going to work. I'm going to put a 3 here. I'm going to put an 8 here. Is the problem done? It's done factoring, but is it done? Why not? Because it's equal to what? 0. So I'm going to take x plus 3, set it equal to 0. I'm going to take x plus 8, set it equal to 0. Notice there was no trash on this one. Okay, my lead coefficient was 1, so you're not going to have trash. though the dream method and the same thought process takes place to do it, so I'm going to wind up with an answer of x is equal to -3. I'm going to wind up with another answer of x equals -8. Okay? If I were to take -3, plug it back into x squared, and x. If I were to take -8 and plug it into x squared and x, and solve both, my answer would come out to be 0. If I had graphed this as a parabola, it would cross the x-axis at -3, 0, and -8 and 0. Those are the solutions to the problem. Okay? There was one on the worksheet that I want to do. I'm going to give you guys a worksheet in a couple minutes, but I wanted to do this one first. Because it wasn't the nicer of the thing. So I'll do the not so nice. Okay? So we just want to factor these. I'm not solving these. So we're going to have the function at x is equal to 25x squared plus 10x minus 8. Okay, so a little bit different than we've seen because it's equal to the function at x. And the function at x is the same thing as what? The function at x is the same thing as what? Y. Okay, it's called writing in functional notation rather than, y equals notation if you wanted to. Okay, so we just want to factor this. We're not going to take the binomials and set them equal to 0. I just want to break the factors down. Okay, so step number 1 is I'm going to write 25x and 25x. You still with me? 25x times 25x is 625x squared. My lead coefficient is only 25, so this must mean we have trash. Greatest common factor we'll throw away. All right. Being that this is a negative here, what can you tell me about the two signs in the binomials? One's negative, one's positive. Doesn't really matter the order you put it in at this point. Okay? What is -8 dreaming about being? What is it? -200? I like it. Good. So -200 is what -8 is dreaming about being. Okay? So I want to figure out the factors of 200, one being positive, one being negative, that would add up to be 10. So I'm just going to go through. I got 1 and 200. And I know some of you can do this a lot faster. 2 and 100. What else? 3 doesn't work. Does 4? 4 and 50? Does that work? I think. Does 5 work? 5 and what? 40? Good. Do we have any of those that are going to add up to 10 yet? No, we got to keep going. Does 6 work? I don't know if 6 is going to work. I don't know, 7 or 8. Now, I know 10 will work. 10 and what? 10 and what? 10 and 20. I think that's as far as we need to go. Why am I stopping there? Yeah, that's going to work out. Okay, there might be other factors, but once you see the answer pop up, go with it. Okay, so plus 20 and -10. Okay, so positive 20 and -10. If I add 20 and -10 together, I'm going to wind up with positive 10. Do I have trash here? Yeah, what's the greatest common factor? It goes to both. 5. If I factor a 5 out, I'm left with 5x plus 4. What about this one? Is there a greatest common factor? Yeah, 5 factors out, throw it away. So I'm left with 5x minus 2. If I foiled that back together, I'd get 25x squared plus 10x minus 8. Am I done with this problem? Yes. Why? Said factor, and it's also equal to not what? It's not equal to 0. So it's not equal to 0. You're just factoring it, and you're done. Okay? So this worksheet coming out to you guys. Yeah, it wasn't anything fancy in the book, sorry. Nice thing is you get to fold it up, put it in your sock, carry it around with you all weekend. You guys will have it taped up in your for tonight. Going, dude, what is? Oh, it's my worksheet. I'm just funny.